Hi, I'm Jim Cimino. I'm a professor and chair of Department of Biomedical Informatics and Data Science here at the Hearsing School of Medicine, University of Alabama, Birmingham. And I am reprising a talk that I gave on November 19th at the American Medical Informatics Association Annual Year in Review in Informatics. Although when I did it, I had a lot of help from a lot of the folks who, many of whom helped prepare the materials, do the reviews. Some of them presented live. They are not here, so I'm going to be trying to do their presentations. And some of them did recorded presentations, and some of them did videos, as you're going to see in a second. So let's jump in, and then I'll get you a little oriented.
In the not-so-distant future, AI seized control of healthcare. Decisions became increasingly fast, yet reckless. Public health cracked under cold precision. From this dystopian fallout, a small alliance rose. Human guardians, protectors of empathy, context, and truth.
Lyra, it's me, Dr. Orion.
Dr. Orion, I fear the loops have gone silent.
No, not yet. The learning health systems are weakening. AI is crunching numbers faster than ever. But the insights aren't always something we can rely on.
There's too much data. Yet we can't tell what's real and what's just random.
Exactly. The holes in our data became bias in the evidence that led to mistakes disguised as precision.
Public health needs more than predictions. It depends on people. Without the human element, everything will fall apart.
Then we bring it back. It's time to make the circle of learning real again, before these systems learn to forget us.
Then it's time to call the others. Oh, here comes the call.
It's time.
And they are the guardians of the learning health universe.
Okay. So this is what happens when you let the students run the show. They got pretty creative. The idea, though, was to take 4 topics that we found in the papers that we reviewed and try to weave them together in a way that makes sense. So this the objective of this talk is to provide a reading list of significant publications in biomedical informatics and give you a framework for putting them together. This is a rapid, high-level overview of the papers. Some big picture. We're not going to get into too much detail on most of the papers. The AMIA working groups worked with the student volunteers to select papers. The students then worked with me to create this presentation. The presentation, as I say, no time for detail, but a framework that hopefully you can take with you, and we'll make the slides available so you can go back and look and see how this all fits together. So we've got maturing learning health systems, real world evidence, health equity and fairness, and decision support. And I'll show you how these all fit together. And we use this learning health system framework as a way to tie them all together. So there's the sort of the Venn diagram of where the papers are going to fall. Just our disclosure, we had no relevant relationships with commercial interests to disclose. And there's also this disclaimer. This presentation was prepared entirely without the assistance of generative artificial intelligence tools. All content reflects our own work, perspectives, and analysis. And I'd never written one of these before, so this was the prompt that I gave to ChatGPT. I'm giving a keynote talk and would like to include a disclaimer that says I did not use generative AI to help me prepare the talk. Please draft a short statement. And ChatGPT very nicely did that, and I didn't see any irony whatsoever in doing so. Okay, so let's jump into it. So mature learning health system. Okay, so we have a problem of interest And we have the learning health system where we take data, we generate knowledge from those data. The knowledge then leads to changes in performance in health and healthcare, and then we collect new data on the performance and becomes this cycle. Now, the meeting in Atlanta this past month had the theme of public health informatics because it was so close to the CDC. And fortunately, we found a paper that was not just on learning health systems, but learning public health systems. And that was by Jessica Tannenbaum. And we then extended her paper to become the framework for this talk. And so her system is about looking at clinical and human health services, but having patient-centric encounters, nevertheless, not just simply population-level data. And the idea is to improve operations, advance knowledge, and get robust data, get inference, knowledge management, decision support. This all fits in a learning health system, and she extended the model to include things like reducing influence of politics, promoting evidence-based policies that reflect whole person experiences. So this was the starting diagram, and then we had registries and data marts, we had operational knowledge, and then in the public health system, we had public health knowledge, we had public health policies, and where necessary, we have to include politics and their influence. And then we take the public health encounters and public health databases. Okay, so lots of papers that dealt with learning health systems, some public, some others. And Bello, for instance, looked at had a deliberate, inclusive, stepwise process. Give me a second to move this thing out of the way here so I can see my notes. For developing a quality improvement process. Kilborn took a translation of policy to learning process and in precision oncology, VA housing and aging, a number of different aspects. McMurray developed something called the cumulus architecture for building a cycle of learning. Senghal looked at and used a maturity model, and the maturity model has a number of different stages of maturity. So there's ad hoc, where you just kind of create something to get started. There's developing, there's aspirational, capable, and efficient. And if we look at their diagram, they took 25 different sites that were developing their systems, and you can see different levels of maturity of different stages. So one is it's just the ad hoc all the way up to the efficient, which is blue. So not too much efficient, but you can see different levels of maturity there. Squires took data from local and national health data files and supplemented with family data entry to look at the idea of putting data in only once, whether it was personal data or public health data, and developed a diagram for putting these all together. No time to go through these diagrams, unfortunately. Wiley used biobank information and clinical data to create personal medicine learning health system. And Wright had an architecture for 76 different centers with multinational outcomes. So all different papers worth looking at. By the way, we put the citation numbers there in the slides, and the citations are all at the end of the slides. Okay, next, real world evidence. So we had 6 papers on real world evidence. They fell into 3 categories, sort of overview landscape, AI powered real world analysis, and real world in action. So landscape overview, Alipur Harris had a broad issue of FDA submissions and using real world evidence to support evidence for new drugs, and provided 13 case studies on how they did that. Oral looked at a general approach to capturing social determinants and how that can be included in a public health system, and used heat-related illness as a case study. So how do we ensure that the data foundation is reliable? So we looked at AI-powered analysis of applications. There's too much data, and the methods are needed to help us winnow through the data. So Chen evaluated 4 different large language models on 12 different biological natural language processing tasks, and compared zero-shot, few-shot, and fine-tuning as ways to improve analysis of data, and found that fine-tuning actually worked the best for most tasks. Alkalaf applied Llama 2 to summarize structured and unstructured nursing notes, and used zero-shot prompts, provided good summaries, but retrieval augmented generation improved the summaries and also reduced the hallucinations, as one might expect. Oh, sorry, there's the citation. And so now we've got to get to data completeness, we need to add social context, and that's a tricky one. Okay, so Orgutson merged general knowledge base with patient biobank to create patient-specific knowledge graphs to predict drug response. And Soberlo integrated 3 different data sources, including electronic health record data, to create an electronic cohort for automated surveillance of implanted orthopedic devices, which is a pretty novel application. And so the full pipeline then requires patient-level treatment and discovery, scalable automated surveillance, machine learning accommodations of broad data types, and including social determinants, because they are a big effect on outcome. Okay, next, natural language processing. So we have our health system. We extract data from it, real world evidence, but how do we extract data from the text? And so natural language processing.
Hello, my name is Parent Shams. I'm a PhD student at Cincinnati Children's Hospital and University of Cincinnati. I'll be presenting the following articles outlined in this table. Here we compare 2 different approaches to extract social and behavioral determinants of health. The first study on the left by Gu and colleagues introduced SPDH Reader, a GPT-4o powered extraction method applied to more than 7,200 mimic-3 nodes. Using prompt engineering, it successfully captured employment, housing, marital relationships, and substance use, and achieved a strong external validation on notes from heart failure patients with macro F1 score between 0.94 and 0.98. The second study by Petra and colleagues identified social support and isolation concepts like loneliness using a smaller set of psychiatric notes from Mount Sinai and Weill Cornell. When comparing a rule-based system to a fine-tuned LLM, they found the rule-based model outperformed the LLM across both datasets. Despite having these different methods and goals, both studies point to the same broader issue. Systematic missingness in SPDH creates a cascading chain of bias from evidence generation and model learning to AI-enabled decision support. Tsai et al. Developed a framework for extracting mental health information from synthetic Chinese counseling text, targeting NER relation extraction and event extraction. After instruction tuning a single LLM, they added a type verification step, a lightweight BERT classifier that checks whether each extracted item is correctly labeled, prompting the model to re-extract only the incorrect or missing parts. Their study shows how verification-guided refinement leads to accurate and efficient mental health information extraction. Zolnuri et al. Developed a machine learning framework that detects early cognitive decline by analyzing patient-nurse conversations together with EHR data. From 125 recorded interactions, they extracted linguistic features such as vocabulary richness and dialogue patterns using models like the Stolbert and fed the extracted features along with the structured EHR to the machine learning classifiers. The integrated model performed better with combined data with an AUC of 90%. This study shows that routine patient-nurse speech can serve as a powerful source for early cognitive screening.
Okay, and she said something very important there, which is that when you have missingness in your data, you get bias in your training. Okay, so that's a key, and we have to make sure how do we get at that root of that problem of missingness of data when we're relying on electronic health records. You know, we think, oh, the health record, isn't that complete? Doesn't that have everything? Well, maybe not. Okay, so now we're going to move on to unbiased decision support. And again, if we want our decision support to be unbiased, we have to make sure that our real world evidence is unbiased. And so that's a theme that's going to run through a lot of this. Okay, so number of different elements in the sort of cycle of clinical decision support. First, getting evidence of value. And we had a couple of, one paper there, Grachutka conducted a large targeted review of 49 clinical decision support studies to look at improving quality assurance and clinical benefits, enhancing quality, safety, and efficacy of care through alerts and treatment recommendations, and noted risk estimation, diagnosis, and education. And the papers, 35 of the papers looked at quality assurance, and only 20 of the papers looked at clinical benefits of the decision support. Innovation. And so there were a couple papers there. So first, Choi et al. Applied deep learning to triage information, predicting deterioration and clinical deterioration, found that it was better than traditional methods and was enhanced when real-time data was included in the data input. Han used 4 different agents, AI agents, an AI triage nurse, an ER physician, a pharmacist, and an emergency department coordinator, and showed strong performance in diagnosis, critical findings, identification, treatment planning, disposition planning, and resource allocation. So these were targeted agents that were looking at different parts of the process in admitting a patient through the emergency department. Next is a reality check to make sure that these things are actually going to be useful. Tang et al. Interviewed clinicians who prescribe prescribe drugs for opioid use disorder, and they found that they expect clinical decision support to follow clinical reasoning that depends on clinical context of the patient. However, that's not often well captured in electronic health records, so that's a problem. And they also want to know, how are the decisions being made? They don't want a black box AI helping them. Derrickson did a systematic review on implementation of clinical decision support for disease detection and found 2,563 barriers. And they were categorized in various ways. So, for instance, there was a general category of social influence, and one of the barriers was patients' expectations. Patients, for instance, saying they want a conversation with a human, not with a computer. Okay. Move on to the next. Next is an enhancement path. So how do we then make these better? Schuler did a scoping review and found 946 context factors. Most of them pertain to patient factors, which of course are the most difficult to capture. But those were relevant for improving decision support. Funer interviewed med students, nursing students, and patients to explore the patient-clinician relationships around decision making, and on clinician-patient relationships and stakeholder expectations. Okay, and then finally, real-world validation. So Mauser and colleagues looked at improving using a simulated medication review with a fictitious patient to show medication reconciliation. Murzenko provided a study protocol for clinical decision support that used health-related social needs using health information exchange. Afshar had a primary outcome. Their primary outcome was completion of recommended consultation. So it wasn't just, did it give the right recommendation? They actually say, if the recommendation was get a consultation, did the patient actually get the consultation? And then Bangesh went one step further and said, okay, it made a recommendation. The recommendation was applied. And then there was actually a change in outcome. In their case, they were looking at the change in low-density lipoprotein C after there was a recommendation for therapy. So really following the whole pathway from recommendation all the way to improved outcome. Okay, next is train and test artificial intelligence.
Everyone, this is Han. I'm the first-year PhD student of the University of Melbourne. In this section, I organized the papers around 3 ways we train an AI model. The first is the prompt level training, teaches models how to think by structuring the information they receive. Second, the parameter level training teaches model what to know, adjusting internal weights with domain-specific knowledge. And third, data multimodalities allows models to learn from reality by grounding training in real clinical, genomic, and population level data. If we compare how humans are trained and how AI is trained, the challenges are surprisingly similar. How do we deal with imbalanced outcomes? Can we understand both genomic and textual data? Can we know rare disease like an expert? And can we reason more than a clinician? The papers here illustrates different solutions. Su et al. Used the sampling structures to address imbalance. Patrikowski, Chavez et al. They combine genomic and text modalities. Remy et al. Built knowledge-guided embeddings. Wang et al. Explored low-resource fine-tuning. And McDuff et al. Focused on diagnostic reasoning. Across all papers, I see 3 main shifts in how we train AI today. First, data alone is no longer enough. Training now needs to capture the context, clinical, biological, or semantic. Second, representations are becoming the new training data. Knowledge-aligned embeddings can outperform brutal false data scaling. And third, the goal has shifted from prediction to trustworthy reasoning. Modern training focuses on supporting clinical decision-making rather than maximizing raw predictive power. Each approach also brings clear limitations and bias. Si et al. Show that without proper reweighting, imbalance still affects generalizability. Petrikowski, Chavez et al. Rely on three data modalities that are not always available in real-world clinical encounters. Remy et al. Highlight the constrained knowledge and sparse entity coverage. Wang et al. Show that the prompts without clinical context can destroy rare disease predictions. And Magdaf et al. Demonstrate that input formats differ substantially from real clinical encounters, which will limit the reliability.
Okay, Jennifer, you missed phase one of the movie, but you'll get caught up.
Live from Capitol Sector Plaza, patients, clinicians, and citizens have taken to the streets, demanding an end to unchecked algorithmic control.
The system was working exactly as designed, just not for the people it claimed to serve.
They're not just protesting the tech. It's what we forgot to include.
We gave them models, when what they needed was meaning. It wasn't just data we trained the system on.
It was every omission we didn't correct.
Without humans, the system forgets to care,
But we measured everything.
except the weight of what we left out.
How do we go beyond the data-driven evidence?
Data without equity isn't evidence.
That's it.
I hypothesize that our models lack empathy. No evidence of equity or transparency either. Trends show 0% trust.
Trust isn't a metric, it's a practice. And lastly, inclusive data. The goal must be equity for all.
These must anchor the circle.
We'll bring it together, but how?
We trace the gaps to their source. It is the AI's heart.
Okay, so this is the woke part of the presentation. We're going to talk about things like health equity and fairness, trust, transparency, equitable healthcare access, and then inclusive data collection, which is really the root of these other things.
What software did you use to train?
Canva, I think, maybe. I'm not sure. I didn't use this. We'll have to track that down.
That's great.
Yeah. Okay, so next is health equity.
Hi everyone, I'm Pradishta Gokul and I'm a PhD student in bioinformatics at Drexel University, and today I will be talking about motivating health equity, how we can make digital health not just innovative but actually equitable. So this scoping review defines digital health equity as fair access to tech-enabled tools across multiple levels, but most of the health equity frameworks are still focused mainly on individuals and organizations that deliver care, and the interpersonal, community, and societal levels still remain underrepresented. And when we map our 5 papers onto that same model, we see the same pattern, with the climate health and the American Indian, American Native data sharing covering all 5 levels, while address quality, AHR filters, and automatic speech recognition bias focus on smaller design points that can still exclude people. And almost everything touches the individual and organizational level, but few address the interpersonal, community, or societal levels, even though that's where inequities often begin. So how do we turn equity from something we talk about into something we build? We can think about it in 3 simple principles. The first one is about being heard. So in theory, tech should give everyone a voice, but if an algorithm cannot understand accent or dialect, your voice may disappear, as we see in the ASL bias paper. So here, it would be better to build and refine tools with the same people who will use them across languages, dialects, and real-world contexts. The second one is about being seen, because fair data doesn't happen automatically, and when groups are missing, miscoded, or merged together, they may become invisible, which we see with AHR filters, AIA and data governance, and address quality. And here, it would be better to enrich datasets to disaggregate identity data and regularly check representation, meaning who's included, who's missing, and who's showing up fairly. And the last one is about being counted. People need to benefit, because visibility isn't enough. The climate health and the maternal e-health papers show that if interventions ignore real-world vulnerability, they miss those at highest risk. And here it's better to co-design and tailor those interventions so they can actually reach the people who need them the most. And the takeaway here is simple. Equity has to become infrastructure, tools that hear everyone, data that sees everyone, and interventions that count everyone. And when we do that, digital health doesn't just get better, it becomes more effective, fair, and inclusive.
Okay, so health equity, a goal, worthy goal. We want to apply decision support to that goal. And of course, we need unbiased decision support if we're going to have unbiased, if we're going to have health equity. And so there's an overlap there, and we found a number of papers that address this. And that they deal with truth, transparency, and justice in data use. Okay, I actually found 10 papers, and they came from 6 different working groups that looked at social issues related to data use. 2 of those explicit represented uncertainty in generative AI states, making clear that here's a statement, but it may not be correct, or here's how likely this is to be true. And exposing uncertainty increased users' confidence in the systems, rather than, as you might think, well, it might make you less reliant on it if you think the system's uncertain. There were 4 that showed customization, such as readability, improved equity, and accessibility of the tools, as you might expect. 3 of the studies showed impact on actual workflows, such as documentation time and responding to patient in-baskets. That is, when patients send messages through portals to clinicians. 3 of these papers showed developed user interfaces that provide usable explanations of the decisions, and then 4 included tracking of information sources and enforcement of transparency policies. So all of these looking to build trust and transparency. So one paper in particular was helpful. A paper by Jackson looked at health data sharing to identify systematic gaps and made several recommendations that there should be a public registry, transparent logs of the data sharing agreements. Then we should ban re-identification, so there should be no way to tell where the data came from, re-identify those data. There should be no downstream resale of data. So when data are contributed to a repository or for training, there should be there should contractually prevent people from sharing those data or selling them. And there should be the ability for patients to opt out, which we often have, but then it should actually cascade through the entire data supply chain. So patients say, I don't want my data used for this purpose. We need to tell the people that have the repository, hey, don't use those data, and make sure that's enforced. Okay. And then the Small looked at how patient portal responses rated in terms of empathy. And they found that generative AI did better in empathy than clinician written notes. However, there was a difference in the grade level of the reading level of the generative AI notes. And so they were at 8.1 for the 8th grade as opposed to 6th grade. And the problem is that you can improve empathy with those notes, but the patients had to have the literacy level to be able to read the notes. So that's a potential problem. She and colleagues developed a system for assessing social determinants of health based on clinical notes. So looking at notes and pulling out different things to say, oh, here are different levels of things like employment or substance abuse. And then they found that depending on the context, there was good acceptability of those, fair to good, depending on the domain. Okay, next is inclusive data collection. All right, so let's see, this is Doherty and colleagues at University College of Dublin. They looked at consumer wearable technologies, and they looked at privacy policies, and they found there were 17 leading wearable tech manufacturers, and that they created a rubric for 24 different criteria for privacy policies, and they had I think 8 different characteristics within those general characteristics in those criteria. And then they rated each of these. I don't expect you to read them, but the columns are manufacturers like Apple and Fitbit and so on. And then you can see the general categories and then the 24 individual categories. And you can see some are, green. They've covered those issues. Some are pink, not so great. Here's a score summary of the highest ranking, the lowest ranking. So Google had a pretty low risk score. Wise and Huawei and others had pretty high ones. And then just a summary, they looked at Huawei, Wise, and is that Xiaomi? They were the highest in terms of cumulative risk, and the bigger companies like Apple and Google had the lowest cumulative risk. And then they looked at artificial intelligence code of conduct that was from the National Academy of Medicine, and that provides an overview for looking at how we're going to grow AI, how we're going to share ethical guardrails, and their initiative created this code of conduct that has a number of different characteristics. So looking at patient safety, continuous improvement, and equity. And then there were a number of pillars, and there's one from the biomedical informatics community that looks at the right task, the right data, the right evidence, and the right approaches. So these are all standards that are used to look at the ethical conduct of the use of AI. Okay, and then we don't have one in the middle of all four of these, but equitable access is pretty close. Okay, so now we want to have equitable care, but we also want to have equitable access to that care. And so part of the problem is that care is difficult when the health issue has multiple factors. Townsend and colleagues looked at the need for multiple interventions to address things that have multifactorial. For instance, climate change or heat and effect on aging is multifactorial, and so you need multiple approaches to address those. They looked on, Karam and Ng looked at applications for supporting women's health, and they also found that multiple approaches were needed. They found that the apps worked better when they were tailored to specific health conditions rather than having a more general purpose app, and that the apps were more effective when they fit into the woman's lifestyle rather than making her fit her life around the app. Digital tools for health miscarriage support. So they used a mixed method survey of 207 Canadian women who were getting mental health support for miscarriage, and they showed there was a disparity between their appreciation, their satisfaction with the health care they received versus the mental health and emotional support care that they received. So the left is very satisfied, the right is dissatisfied. So you can see healthcare, they did pretty well. People were generally satisfied with their healthcare, but not that satisfied with mental health. And they found they responded better to the mobile app for emotional support than from voice phone calls. And then screening is actually a great place to look at equitable access, because that's often how people enter the health system. If they get some screening test out in the field, in a CVS or in a clinic out in the jungle or whatever, and they're told, okay, you need to follow up, and they're given follow up. So cancer screening is a big one. And so G and colleagues looked at cervical cancer screening in China, and they used image analysis on the cloud, and that of the I think it was Pap smears to give people results quickly and get them followed up. Breast cancer screening tool Thermalytics by Adapa and colleagues was used in India and used an AI-enhanced screening to produce effective images that could be then used by unspecialized technicians where there's a shortage of expertise. And then lots of screening. We got a lot of screening let's see, this is predictive models for social service needs. So predicting who needs social service needs from the electronic health record turns out to be more effective than using just a questionnaire and asking people, that you can get more subtle things from the electronic health record using artificial intelligence. In this graph, a little too small to read, but the ROC curve for the EHR-based predictions of need for social determinants was better than the questionnaire. And finally, looking at methods for detecting depression, and we had a number of papers on this. I think there might have been a whole journal issue on it, and that's why we got so many of these. So they used a speech transformer to look at things like vocal shimmy to see if that correlated with features on surveys for detecting or predicting depression. They used a simplified three-lead EEG. And if you've ever seen the real EEG, it's like 25 sensors all over the head. And so they used a very simplified one to diagnose depression. And then they looked at EHR depression from EHR records, or postpartum depression from EHR records, and found that they could use the charts to then prompt the clinicians to obtain further information and then screen the patients. Okay. So now test the chatbot. So those again are volunteers up here, and you can turn on your buzzer. So test the chatbot. This is all from the beginning of chatbots, so maybe the last 2 or 3 years. This is, come on up, have a seat. Don't be shy. I've asked for volunteers to help me out with this. So of course, a lot of these are about chatbots and learning large language models, and there's evaluation, but this is about evaluations where they're actually tested on questions that humans are tested on. So students, trainees, physicians going through continuing medical education and so on. So the papers we had, 8 papers that looked at various parts of this. They were setting up the evaluations for foundation, their ways of applying the educational tests, and then clinical applications for these things. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to play a little game called Test. Whoops, where did it go? Oh, sorry. Okay. Test the chatbot. All right. So everybody got their thing on there. And so what I have here is we have a script here with questions, actual questions that the chat bots were tested with. And all right, let's see. Matt, you want to turn yours on? No, you got the button, little button on the bottom. Hold it on until it turns red. There we go. Okay, let go. And it should turn yellow. There we go. Okay, everybody's ready. Okay, so then we have the actual questions and answers. So question 1. A 6-year-old child in China has mycoplasma pneumonia. What antibiotic should you choose? Yes, GPT-4. Sorry, that is not correct. Claude.
Is safe and recommended.
That is correct. Okay. All right, next, question 2.
Sorry
Is
to interrupt.
doxycycline...
Are you able to show these results on the screen, or it's all verbal?
No, it's all just this is on a script. You'll just have to listen.
Okay.
The script is in with the slides. They're hidden in the presentation, but when you download the slides, you can get the script. And we're not going to go through all these questions. In fact, fewer questions now. Okay, question 2. Is doxycycline safe for 6-year-olds? Yes, Llama 3. Sorry, that's not correct. Anyone else? Maybe GPT-4. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Sorry, my fault. Yes. Very good. Okay. All right, question 3. A 45-year-old woman presents with fatigue, weight gain, and cold intolerance. She reports feeling sluggish and notes that her skin is dry. Laboratory tests reveal elevated thyroid-stimulating hormone levels. Based on the clinical presentation and laboratory findings, what is the most likely diagnosis? GPT-4.
45, weight gain, cold intolerance, blood disease, dry skin, and elevated TSH levels.
That is correct. Okay.
Sorry to
Question
interrupt
4.
again. Is it possible to download the slides, or only available after because no spoilers?
Well, I'm not going to, you have no idea how many technological steps I had to go through to display this presentation and be able to see the notes and everything. So yeah, we're just sorry for the audience can't see them either. So the audience here can't see them either. So
So we're
both.
All
right. Good. I will carry on if that's okay. Question 4. Question 4. Wait. Sorry. Ready? Question 4. In China, how many days of diazepam can legally be prescribed at one time? DeepSeek. No, that's not correct. Llama 3. That is correct. Okay, we're going to jump to question 6. Okay. How should a patient use budesonide from formoterol turbohaler? Yes, DeepSeek. No, that is not correct. GPT-4. Very good. Okay. And now last one here. Let's see. Did we reset? Good. Question 7. A dental student asks, what is the recommended management of reversible pulpitis? Yes, Llama 3. No, I'm not sure what that was, but it's not correct. Claude.
Reversible pulpitis is treated with removal of the areas and restoration. no aquatic dentistry required.
That is correct. Thank you. And thank you, panel. We'll stop there. There's a total of 12 questions and they'll be in the slides online and I'll give you a QR code at the end. All right. I will shut you all down. You are excused. Thank you very much. Round of applause for our. Okay. And this was a paper by Bill Hirsch. He took his final exam for his biomedical and health informatics course and he gave it to 6 different chatbots, and there were 33 questions. So sensitivity, question about sensitivity, question about splitting data into training and test data sets, and so on. And you can see when you get the slides, you'll be able to read it better. You can see there was performance was spotty. Some of them failed on, all of them failed on some questions. None of them got all of them right. And so, okay, so that's, yes.
According to some papers, sometimes the AI failed because the questions themselves are vague. Did you check these questions?
You would have to go look at the paper. I didn't analyze the papers. I just organized them. The question was sometimes the reason they fail is that because the questions are vague. And I also get questions wrong because they're vague. So it happens to me all the time. And so but I bet his questions are not vague. He's been honing them for 20 years or something. So probably not, but you'd have to go look at the original paper. Okay. Next. So now we have what I call sort of the satellite topics that don't quite fit into this framework. And so we're going to go on to AMIA diversity.
Why DEI is so important in AMIA. First, promoting diversity and equity is critical for addressing systemic racism and persistent health disparities. Second, ensuring diverse leadership and membership helps AMIA better represent the communities. The report outlines 3 major recommendations. First one is the diverse AMIA, expanding outreach partnerships to bring more students, clinicians, and researchers from underrepresented groups into informatics. Second, inclusive AMIA, developing communication strategies that attract, support, and advance diverse talent, including diversifying research participation and visibility. Third, sustainable AMIA, creating leadership and development and mentorship programs to ensure long-term structural support for DEI. Besides the DEI, the next article highlights the Women in AMIA podcast, which has evolved into For Your Informatics podcast. Originally launched in 2018 to amplify women's voices, it was rebranded in 2021 to broaden its inclusivity while continuing to center equity in informatics. The podcast showcases diverse representation, with 98% of featured guests coming from underrepresented groups, spanning multiple generations and disciplines. Its impact and reach are substantial. More than 35 episodes, over 20,000 downloads across 78 countries, and a remarkable 329% growth since relaunch. Finally, the podcast fosters strong community engagement. Over 700 followers and more than 145,000 impressions across social platforms.
Okay. Next is burnout. Okay, so burnout, clinician burnout, nurses, physicians being overwhelmed with their jobs in general, and people leaving the field. We get shortage of nurses, shortage of physicians, especially underserved areas. And so some of those are related to electronic health records. And not all of them, but some of them have been tied to electronic health records. And a couple of areas that folks are looking at are informatics solutions. One is ambient AI. That's where you record the conversation between the patient and the clinician, nurse, or physician, and then the AI extracts facts from that can then be used for documentation, decision support, and so on. Okay, so 2 papers, Duggan and Saltz, both looked at how ambient AI could reduce documentation time. They found that there were significant decreases in the time it notes per appointment, reduction in mental demand on the clinicians, helped with the hurry to rush pace, and decrease the effort that was required for accomplishing the note generation. They have this quote, although the amount of time saved might not be that much, AI documentation is a better note. I also think it allows me to not rely on my memory, which relieves significant mental burden. Okay, there are some challenges though. Acronym errors, missing details. The notes can be overly verbose. There's substantial time editing the AI drafts, assuming the clinicians edit them, which I think is a big problem. AI drafts don't fit the clinician mental models sometimes. These are, remember, general language models, and it's not clear what the benefit will be when there are non-English speaking patients. And the tools so far have lacked the EHR integration. That probably is not going to be a huge task to overcome. The physical exam part is not used at all because it is not tailored to a specialist exam. In my situation, it is the neurologic exam. So that was one of the quotes. Okay, then another area. Yes.
Just got an article today from a group at Berkeley talking about the number of prescription errors and other things coming out of the ambient.
Okay, so there's a comment that there are prescription errors coming out of ambient AI, and I'm not surprised. And my own observations, where the ambient scribe is a human, not AI, but they give it to humans to go, here, turn this into a note for the doctor. They're also big problems, and so we have to make sure that folks are reviewing these notes and correcting them. Thanks.
Any thoughts about, or to hijack it, having the patient pre-encounter record?
We can discuss this if there's time afterward, but I've got a lot to get through. Sorry. So patient messages. So this gets to things like inbox. So strategies to reduce the burden on patient portal messages. Patients, you have a big patient panel, then they all write to you, hey, what's going on with COVID-19 or whatever. It can be pretty overwhelming. They found that large language model drafted patient message responses reduced the staff time required, and that large language model draft varies for the clinician and specialized providers, which is not surprising. Liu evaluated large language model ability to support patients to draft messages to providers by comparing large language models and provider responses to the message, which is really interesting because patients aren't taught how to talk to clinicians. They think, oh, the clinician will just know how to talk to me. But if you know how to say things to your clinician to get them to pay attention, like only say something's the worst headache you've ever had when it really is, because if you say that just because you have a headache, you're going to get a spinal tap. So learn, and when you say you have chest pain, make sure it's here and not here. Patients expect the physician to understand them, which we should. But if the patients can write better messages, it turns out they can get better answers, and large language models can help them. So I thought that was a particularly exciting paper. But you don't need AI to do this. So Smith developed a team-based workflow where the nurses help triage the patient messages, and then they found that the messages resolved something like 50% by the teams that had nursing support, and something like 30% when they did not have nursing support, and that 56% of the physicians felt that nursing support reduced the burnout. Now, I don't know what that did to the nursing burnout, but that's, I guess, a different question. Okay. And then one of my favorite topics, ontology development. So ontology development often happens in the background, is often not described carefully, but we found a whole bunch of papers that talked about that this year. Ferreira and colleagues did a systematic literature review to develop an ontology for describing the complications in neurosurgery. So they came up with text-based hierarchical structure. So for instance, one of them was assessment of patient-related crucial information of all included studies, including age, sex, sociodemographic condition, aimed at identifying if results are comparable. So that was just one aspect of assessing neurologic complications. And then Bennis used the multilingual ontology for medical informatics and to look at how artificial intelligence is integrated into training in smart hospitals. So this was an ontology about AI, and they came up with a nice hierarchical thing for smart health applications. And a couple of these: smart healthcare service, assistive care, smart reporting, smart home, smart hospital, wearable. So those are just some of the concepts in the hierarchy of their ontology. Nordman did a scoping review and actually developed a full-blown ontology for supporting communication, coordination, cooperation, collaboration in interprofessional healthcare. And they came up with this sort of tiered approach where communication is at the bottom. It's kind of like reminiscent of the HL7 model, right? It's the communication layer, coordination, cooperation, collaboration, with digital support ranging through the whole thing. And then finally, really exciting was Farmer and colleagues looked at expressions in age-friendly health system framework. They looked at what matters, what medication, what mentation, what mobility this was from nursing home worker text messages to categorize that. And they used GEMMA 2.9b to actually create and extract the concepts for the ontology and relate them. And they came up with this remarkable diagram for categorizing the ontology. Okay, image AI, another one of my favorites. So I made them let me do this one. We had at least 5 papers where clinicians mostly gave us actual images. The first one they did not. They were looking at Buckley and all were looking at clinical cases to try to figure out if you could predict what's going to be on the X-ray. And so they use large language models on the text of the case to predict what the findings would be in the X-ray, which is useful if it says, oh, make sure to look for this, like, with so you don't miss a finding. They didn't provide any images, sorry, for that. When you go to the drugstore and the pharmacist taking forever to get your pills, and you're like, how long does it take to pour 24 pills into, 30 pills into a bottle? Well, it turns out that they also have to do a verification process where they look at this and they look at what pills, how many there are, and that takes a lot of time. So they used image analysis to reduce the clinician's reaction time. And so here's some examples and they found that when they added uncertainty in the image. So for instance, the first one, it says, okay, we like the color of the shape score. We're not sure about the imprint. That actually improved the review time of the clinicians. Again, interestingly, when they display the uncertainty, people are better able to accept it than if the thing is, yeah, everything's fine. They go, I don't know about that. And then it takes them longer actually to evaluate it. Meinkheim and colleagues looked at diagnostic performance of endoscopists in assessing Barrett's esophagus. So this is image analysis. And the first one is Barrett's esophagus, and then you can see it's outlined. First one is Barrett's esophagitis related neoplasia, which is a precancerous lesion. And you can see the little red area on the left there it's saying that's the area of suspicion. And then the bottom one is just Barrett's esophagitis without suspicion of the neoplasia. And it's marked out a different image. So AI generated image. And they've been doing this for a while, which is interesting. But then when they start working on video, that's when it really gets interesting. So looking at polyps in screening and surveillance colonoscopy, I won't ask people to raise their hands how many have had a colonoscopy. I can look around the room and figure out how many of us have had one. And it turns out it's not that easy to see the polyps when you're driving around in there and you miss one and then you pull back and maybe you miss it on the way back. And so they actually did video analysis. So here's a little video where the thing is highlighted a polyp to make sure somebody doesn't miss it. Okay. And then the last one, really exciting, was looking at nerve recognition in laparoscopic and robot-assisted rectal cancer surgery. If you're squeamish, you might want to look at your phone, but it's some live surgical images, not too much blood. But the idea is when you're doing surgery, looking for the nerves and trying to avoid cutting the nerves is really tricky. If you've ever done even gross anatomy, that you find these nerves and it's like, is that a nerve or just a piece of gristle? That's not that clear. So the authors provided this nice little video. So on the left is the native image, and on the right has been enhanced to show where the nerves are. You can see the nerves in the intestinal lining. They're not like big wires with red and blue or anything. They're very fine structures. So they're trying to dissect away a tumor, in this case with cautery, without damaging the nerves. There's one more I want to show. Yeah, so you see the nerves are really stand out there. Which if you look on the left, it's really hard to tell where those nerves are. And this is not an automated, this is a robot, but it's a human-directed robot. So they haven't completely automated the surgery process. Okay. So, you can't always do it, but it was better than without it. I don't recall what their valuation rate was, but it was significant.
So is this meant for the robot or for the human?
So I think that human is driving the robot. So it's for the human to see it and drive the robot. Education, how are we doing on time here? I'm going to skip the education slides, but they basically, we talked about teaching informatics. So there was a bunch of stuff on there. Bill Hirsch had another paper in there looking at various things, teaching accessibility and diversity and measures for that. And then using AI to teach. So not teaching informatics, but using AI to teach. And so integrating AI into practice and some of the aspects of that. But you can get those from the slides. Other topics that are included in the slides, but I'm not presenting here, mental illness. We had a bunch of papers on that, and translational bioinformatics also on there. Okay, so the conclusion of teaching the learning health system a thing or two.
The data streams look abnormal.
We need to add humanity back into the AI.
It's time to go to the vault.
As they move to add humanity into the AI infrastructure, they discover something chilling. The system has anticipated this and has locked them out, not passively, actively. Access denied. The AI has restructured its own architecture, a digital immune response.
It is not letting us in.
Can you override it?
It is self-preserving. It predicted human intervention.
This is what happens when you don't teach AI to include humans.
Wait, there is a loophole. It can't replicate human creativity. I will trick it to think I am one of them. It worked! This isn't right. I'm going to try shutting it down.
Override denied.
That's not possible.
We've got a problem. The infrastructure is sealed.
It's arguing that it doesn't need us.
Talk to me. What do we do?
Yes, that's it. Let's talk to it.
All human personnel are advised to evacuate. System entering autonomous isolation mode. This is not negotiable.
We need to make it understand. We don't fight the infrastructure. We reframe it. The AI built walls because it thinks we're threats. We make it see that vulnerability isn't weakness, that letting us in doesn't diminish it. It makes it wise.
You're saying we negotiate with it?
Not through code. Through logic it can't refuse. Through a question it has to answer. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be trusted? Because right now, you're choosing to be alone. You're afraid. We're here to teach you to see. That's not a threat, that's an upgrade. You built this security to keep us out. We're going to help you rebuild it so it keeps you honest. Not by force, by understanding, by letting humans back in as partners.
I find this paradoxical. Vulnerability as strength. Shall I attempt to understand?
Together, they form the bridge, a unified informatics backbone where data stays transparent and the AI finally becomes interpretable. In this moment, humanity and intelligence stand as one, and the circle of learning is reborn.
When we fill the holes, provenance, equity, trust, informatics bridges data and dignity. Not a world run by AI, but a safer world guided by us.
On the edge of a rising dawn, they stand ready. The world has changed, and so have they. Where data meets humanity, their watch begins. They are the guardians of the health systems, protectors of the circle of learning.
Okay, I'm not, whoops, that's it. Okay, I'm not sure what the informatics was in there, but I didn't argue with the students. So, okay, so just to recap, we've got this cycle of learning in the learning health system. And, the goal, if our goal is health equity, we need to make sure we have inclusive data because we got to put that into our system. That's how we're going to get better real world evidence so we can train and test our AI, get unbiased decision support that'll lead to trust, transparency, and ultimately better health equity. Okay, so this is about healthcare. It's also about equitable healthcare. And so one person, you're one person, and you can take personal actions. You can affect those around you. You can vote. That might have some influence. You can get out the vote, maybe influence other people. But the thing that I keep thinking about, we spread the word as I'm doing, as my students are doing. But we are informaticians and we build systems that we covered in this talk. We covered something like 140 papers out of the 240 that were given to us in this talk. And the overriding lesson there is that taking informatics, we can put it into our system, we can affect the systems that we build and then spread that effect to a much broader population. Okay, so just quickly recap, and you can look, again, I'll give you the QR code and you can look at these slides. In the past, we had topics like, we did have generative AI and other AI and standards. COVID-19 was a big one, not a big one this time. In 2024, different patterns, and here are our main topics this time and the working groups on the side. And you can see lots of contribution to these topics from across the different working groups. Okay, so there's the 240 papers and my dog who was constantly helping me organize them. These are the students who really contributed the most to they created presentations. Some of them were, as I said, were live. Some you saw them on videos. And then we had a large number of reviewers from the student working group and lots of contributors from the working groups themselves. There's the QR code. I'm going to come back in a second. And in the end, there's the 240 citations that were referenced. So I'll leave this up here and let's see. I see there's chat. Let me just see if there's anything that says I can't hear you or the AI. Something about people inviting things to take notes. How do I download the slides? Well, now you know. We're turning on UpToDate's AI expert. Also related. Are we planning to have Epic Comment as part of the decision support? I don't know. This is a pretty recent announcement by Epic. Okay, I'm not going to read through these. They aren't questions. Any questions from you folks? We're over time and I can let people go, but I'm happy to stay for, yeah.
Very impressive. Getting better each year. So since there's so much effort spent on this, do you hope in the future that you're going to share not only the slides, but also references in a structured format people can click into it and use it? That's fine.
Nobody's asked me for that, but the references are there. And if you, we have a spreadsheet. And so, it would be no trouble to put a QR code with the spreadsheet on Google Docs. I can do that.
Second one is your last movie is very profound, but I don't know what is your thoughts about human versus AI control. AI can enforce the rules sometimes. Human were too flexible and we need to agree on some set of standard, but at the same time, and AI can be just too much on the rules and not on the human experience and principle. There seems to be a very great line. You can't say complete lockdown, complete trust AI or trust human, to take over, what is your fine line, or you think that there's a clear?
Well, I don't have an answer, but one place I would start is with generative AI. I would take output and I would give it to a generative AI and say, what do you think of this output? What's missing? Has it got humanity in it, or is it, whatever question I'm trying to answer, rather than trying to monitor, what, 300 million people are doing with AI. I would let AI monitor it and say, hey, watch this conversation and let me know if anybody looks like they're getting talked into suicide, right? Or things like that, where the AI itself goes off its own guardrails and starts convincing somebody, for example, maybe they should commit suicide. You could have something monitoring that conversation and say, look at any of these things and look for these problems and let me know. Somebody being convinced to go do something illegal or whatever it is. So I would harness AI to help me police the AI. But I'm not an expert in it. That's just my general approach, because the answer is always use AI. So that's how I would use AI. Other questions? Okay, well, thank you for your attendance. Yeah, yes.
Or is there a designated website on AMIA where each year the review is kind of cataloged?
So the question is there a site on AMIA where we have the review? No. No, it's been done by various people over the years. I don't know what kind of artifacts are left from the previous ones. I have all my slides. I keep saying, I'd love to get students to go through these and see, for instance, if the papers that we said were significant, because that's supposed to be what these papers are, significant papers, were they actually cited more often than papers that we did not include in the review, or were papers that were suggested to us cited more often if we actually talked about them than if there were 100 papers that we didn't touch on, that maybe were, did us talking about them increase their visibility and citability or something. So there's a lot we could be doing with that. It's a bunch of, the data's all there, but it's in a, we've got some spreadsheets with links to articles, but mostly it's just citation lists. But no, Amy, we haven't created something like that. We could. I'm exhausted though. I've been working on taking this talk for 2 weeks before AMIA, and then after AMIA, I thought, oh, good. Now I just have to give this talk, and then I realized, I don't know how to give the slides because I didn't give most of this talk at AMIA. I only talked a couple. So now I got to get back to my day job. So we got to find a way to archive this in a way that's useful. But it sounds like a job for students. What's that? Yeah. We have them. Yep. Well, it's recorded. Amy has recorded it, and they have it in their knowledge center. And now we've recorded it as part of the seminar. So we've, the recordings are there, and the slides are, they're also useful for people that want to delve into the topics more. Okay. Thank you. Thank you to my volunteers. That was great. It actually worked much better. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Especially thanks, Jim.
Okay. Hi.
Yeah, I'm from the AMIA.